The skies call us all. The hum of an international airport is a symphony of motion, a sea of humanity, each person a world of their own, carrying hopes, stories, and destinies. Among the throng, Captain Rafi del Rosario moved with unassuming confidence. Dressed simply in jeans and a polo shirt, he blended effortlessly into the bustling crowd. His casual appearance belied his extraordinary career as a Filipino-American aviation pioneer. Rafi had spent decades charting paths not just through the skies, but also through the challenging terrain of innovation and equality. His contributions to aviation safety had saved countless lives and reshaped industry standards. Yet he carried his accolades lightly, focused more on his mission than his medals. Today, he was en route to an international aviation summit, where he would share his insights on the next generation of flight safety protocols. As he approached a restricted area marked for airline crew, Rafi glanced briefly at the crowd around him. A mosaic of faces and accents, they reminded him why his work mattered. Aviation wasn't just about machines and technology. It was about connecting people across continents and cultures. But as he neared the checkpoint, a voice interrupted his thoughts. "Sir, this is a restricted area," barked Officer Liam Carter, a burly airport security officer whose stern expression seemed etched into his features. His voice was sharp, with an edge that hinted at suspicion. "Passengers aren't allowed beyond this point." Rafi smiled politely, reaching into his pocket for his ID. "I'm a pilot, officer, just heading to the crew lounge before my flight." Carter's eyes narrowed as he took in Rafi's appearance. He was used to a certain image of authority, one that didn't include someone who looked like Rafi. Without even glancing at the ID, Carter's lips curled into a smirk. "A pilot," he scoffed, his tone laced with condescension. "Sure you are. Let me see that ID." Unfazed, Rafi handed over his badge. Years of navigating high-stress situations in the cockpit had taught him the art of staying calm under pressure. But as Carter examined the badge, his skepticism deepened. "This doesn't look legit," Carter said dismissively. "Where'd you get it?" "Some website." A murmur rose among nearby travelers, some of whom had paused to watch the interaction. Rafi's jaw tightened imperceptibly, but his voice remained steady. "Officer, I assure you, my credentials are authentic. If you need confirmation, you can contact airport administration." Carter crossed his arms, his stance brimming with misplaced authority. "Flying for decades, huh? Maybe paper airplanes. You don't look like any pilot I've ever seen." The crowd around them thickened, their whispers growing louder. Among the onlookers was Laura Stevens, a well-known aviation journalist. She recognized Rafi immediately, his name and face familiar from countless articles she had written about trailblazers in the industry. Her eyes narrowed as she stepped forward, her voice slicing through the tension. "What's going on here?" she asked, her tone sharp enough to demand attention. Carter turned to her, irritation flickering across his face. "Just handling a security situation, ma'am." This man claims he's a pilot, but his story doesn't check out. Laura's brows shot up. "Claims? Do you have any idea who this is?" Carter's skeptical gaze hardened. "Should I?" Laura's voice rose, each word deliberate and forceful. "This is Captain Rafael del Rosario. He's one of the most respected figures in aviation today. He's revolutionized safety protocols and earned awards that most people can only dream of. If anyone belongs here, it's him." Carter stammered, his bravado evaporating under Hayes' stern gaze. I didn't know." "That's the problem," Laura interjected, her tone icy. "You didn't bother to find out before jumping to conclusions." As the tension began to dissipate, Hayes escorted Rafi through the checkpoint, ensuring no further obstacles. But the incident was far from over. By the time Rafi reached the crew lounge, videos of the confrontation had already gone viral. Hashtags like #RespectRafi and #NBS trended within hours, sparking a global conversation about prejudice and the importance of representation in professional spaces. For Rafi, The experience was a reminder of the work that remained to be done. As he prepared for his presentation at the summit, he resolved to address not just safety protocols, but also the broader need for inclusivity and respect in the industry he loved. Rising above the turbulence, the conference room at the aviation summit buzzed with anticipation. Industry leaders, engineers, pilots, and journalists from around the globe gathered in a sprawling hall that shimmered with the promise of innovation. The event was a prestigious one, known for unveiling cutting-edge advancements and hosting the brightest minds in aviation. But today, there was an extra layer of curiosity in the air. News of Captain Rafi Del Rosario's earlier encounter with airport security had spread like wildfire, even among the attendees. Many were eager to hear from the man whose resilience in the face of adversity had become a rallying cry for change within the industry. What would he say? Would he address the incident or focus solely on the technical topics for which he was renowned? Behind the stage curtain, Rafi stood calmly, reviewing his notes. The earlier confrontation with Officer Carter had been unsettling, but it had also reignited a sense of purpose within him. For decades, Rafi had worked not only to ensure safer skies, but also to challenge the invisible barriers that held back talented individuals from diverse backgrounds. Today wasn't just about aviation. It was about the human spirit's ability to soar above prejudice and doubt. "Captain Del Rosario, you're up in 5, a stagehand informed him, snapping him out of his thoughts. Rafi nodded, offering a small smile. Adjusting his tie, he took a deep breath. He wasn't just about to deliver a presentation. He was about to share a story that mattered. The applause was thunderous as Rafi stepped onto the stage. The spotlight bathed him in light, illuminating not just his presence, but the magnitude of his accomplishments. As he reached the podium, the room fell silent, every eye fixed on him. "Good afternoon, everyone," he began, his voice steady and warm. "It's an honor to stand before you today. As someone who has spent most of his life navigating the skies, I can tell you that the journey is rarely smooth. Turbulence, as we call it in aviation, is a part of life, both in the air and on the ground." The audience chuckled softly at the analogy, but they could sense there was more to his words. "Before I delve into the technical aspects of my presentation," Rafi continued, "I want to share something that happened to me earlier today. Something that reminded me why gatherings like this are so important, not just for innovation, but for inclusion." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. The room was so quiet that even the faint hum of the projector could be heard. "This morning, I was stopped at a security checkpoint," he said. "Despite presenting my credentials, I was questioned and dismissed because I didn't fit someone's idea of what a pilot should look like. For a moment, I was reminded of the many barriers I've faced throughout my career, but I was also reminded of why I persist." Rafi looked around the room, his gaze meeting the eyes of audience members who now leaned forward in their seats. "For years, I've worked in an industry that has the power to connect the world. Aviation transcends borders, languages, and cultures. Yet even here, biases persist. Unspoken assumptions about who belongs and who doesn't. These biases don't just hurt individuals, they hurt innovation. They prevent us from harnessing the full potential of diverse talents and perspectives." The audience erupted into applause, a wave of support and understanding washing over the room. Rafi waited for the applause to subside before continuing. "But I don't share this story to dwell on the negative," he said, his tone softening. "I share it to highlight the importance of resilience and the power of allyship. Because in that moment of doubt and dismissal, I wasn't alone. People like Laura Stevens, an incredible journalist, stood up for me. She reminded everyone that who I am is defined not by appearances, but by actions and contributions." Laura, seated near the front, blushed slightly as the room turned to acknowledge her. Rafi smiled at her before turning back to the audience. "This industry has taught me many things," Rafi continued. "But the most important lesson is that the skies are vast enough for all of us. If we're to navigate them successfully, we must rise above the clouds of bias and division. We must create an environment where talent, passion, and dedication are the only metrics that matter. Rafi's words resonated deeply, and when he transitioned into his technical presentation, detailing innovative safety protocols he had developed, the audience was captivated. He spoke with authority and clarity, weaving together science, experience, and vision. By the time he concluded, the crowd leaped to its feet in a standing ovation that seemed to shake the walls. Backstage, Rafi was approached by industry leaders and young professionals alike. Some wanted to express their admiration for his technical expertise, while others wanted to thank him for speaking out against the prejudices that still lingered in their field. "You're an inspiration," one young pilot said, her voice filled with emotion. "I've faced similar challenges, and hearing your story makes me believe I can overcome them too." "That's why we're here," Rafi replied, shaking her hand firmly, "to make sure no one has to fight these battles alone." Meanwhile, in a quiet corner of the airport break room, Officer Carter watched a replay of Rafi's speech on a small television. His face was etched with a mix of shame and reflection. He hadn't expected the story to gain so much attention, and now, seeing Rafi in a different light, he couldn't ignore the truth of his actions. The airport administration had placed Carter on suspension and mandated him to attend cultural sensitivity training. Though the decision stung, Carter found himself strangely grateful. Watching Rafi speak, he realized that his own biases had not just embarrassed him. They had limited his ability to see the humanity and potential in others. For the first time in years, Carter felt a spark of something new, the desire to change. By the time the summit concluded, Rafi had become a symbol of resilience and progress. Media outlets around the world covered his story, not just as an account of an unjust encounter, but as a call to action for industries everywhere. Back at the airport, as Rafi prepared to board his flight, he was approached by a group of passengers and staff. Some wanted photos, others shared their gratitude for his words. Among them was Carter, who stood quietly at the back of the group, his usual bravado replaced with humility. "Captain Del Rosario," Carter began hesitantly. I want to apologize. For earlier, I was wrong." Rafi studied him for a moment, then extended a hand. "Thank you for saying that. The first step toward change is recognizing where we've gone wrong." Carter shook his hand, the weight of the moment not lost on him. As Rafi boarded his flight, Carter watched, vowing silently to do better, not just for himself, but for everyone who passed through his watch. The story of Captain Rafael Del Rosario became more than just a viral moment. It became a movement, inspiring countless individuals to challenge their own assumptions and strive for a world where everyone, regardless of their background, could soar. Rafi's legacy as an aviation pioneer was solidified, but more importantly, his impact as a force for change had only just begun. The journey beyond the horizon. A week after the aviation summit, the world was still buzzing with the story of Captain Rafi Del Rosario. News outlets, social media, and aviation circles couldn't stop discussing the event, not just for the technical brilliance of his presentation, but for the deeper conversations it had sparked. In airports, boardrooms, and classrooms, people talked about Rafi not just as a pilot, but as a symbol of resilience, integrity, and change. His story had become a rallying cry for those seeking to dismantle the barriers of bias, particularly in industries where diversity had historically been underrepresented. The ripple effect. Rafi, however, had moved on with his characteristic humility. For him, the summit wasn't about the attention, it was about the work. He returned to his usual schedule of piloting, mentoring, and advocating for safety and inclusivity in aviation. Yet he couldn't ignore the ripple effect of that one moment in the airport. One evening, as he sat in his home office reviewing notes for an upcoming flight, his email inbox pinged. The subject line read, "Inspired by you." Intrigued, he opened the message. It was from a young woman named Mia Hernandez, an aspiring aerospace engineer from a small town in Texas. She wrote about how she had nearly given up on her dreams after facing repeated instances of discrimination in her field. But after seeing the videos of Rafi's encounter and his subsequent speech, she found the courage to push forward. "You reminded me," Mia wrote, "that what matters isn't what people expect of me. It's what I expect of myself. Thank you for showing me that I belong, no matter what anyone says." Rafi read the email twice, his heart swelling with a mix of pride and humility. Over the next few days, similar messages poured in, letters from young pilots, mechanics, engineers, and even passengers who felt seen and inspired by his story. An unlikely ally. One morning, as Rafi prepared for a routine flight, he received an unexpected call. The airport director, Martin Hayes, was on the line. "Captain Del Rosario," Hayes began, "I thought you should know that Officer Carter requested to meet with you." Rafi's eyebrows lifted in surprise. "Carter? From the incident?" "Yes," Hayes confirmed. "He's been undergoing sensitivity training, and he's expressed a sincere desire to apologize to you in person. I told him it was your decision." Rafi thought for a moment before nodding to himself. "Tell him I'd be happy to meet." A week later, the meeting took place in a small conference room at the airport. Carter arrived early, his usual air of authority replaced by a quiet humility. When Rafi entered, Carter stood, shifting nervously on his feet. "Captain Del Rosario," Carter began, his voice unsteady. "Thank you for agreeing to see me. I wanted to apologize, properly this time." Rafi gestured for him to sit. "I'm here to listen." Carter took a deep breath. "What I did that day was wrong. I judged you unfairly because of my own biases, and I've spent a lot of time reflecting on that. The training sessions have opened my eyes to how damaging those biases can be, not just to individuals but to entire communities." Rafi studied Carter for a moment, then nodded. "Acknowledging the problem is the first step. What matters now is what you do with that understanding." Carter nodded earnestly. "I've already started making changes. I've been volunteering to mentor young people from underrepresented backgrounds, and I've joined an initiative to improve diversity and inclusion in airport security. It's not much yet, but I want to do better." For the first time, Rafi smiled. "That's a good start. Change doesn't happen overnight, but it does happen with commitment." A new flight path. As months passed, the impact of Rafi's story continued to grow. The hashtag campaigns evolved into real-world initiatives. Aviation organizations began reviewing their hiring practices, introducing bias training for staff, and creating mentorship programs for aspiring professionals from diverse backgrounds. Rafi himself became a sought-after speaker, not just for his expertise in aviation safety, but for his advocacy for equity. He started collaborating with industry leaders to develop programs that would make aviation more accessible to young people who might never have considered it as a career. One such program was launched in partnership with Laura Stevens, the journalist who had stood up for Rafi during the airport incident. Together, they created Skyline Futures, an initiative that provided scholarships, mentorship, and internships to students from underserved communities. The program quickly gained traction, drawing support from airlines, aerospace companies, and educators around the world. A global stage. 1 year after the summit, Rafi found himself on an even larger stage, the United Nations, where he had been invited to speak at a global forum on diversity and inclusion. Delegates from over 190 countries filled the Grand Hall, their attention riveted as Rafi took the podium. "Good evening," he began, his voice resonating through the chamber. "Aviation has taught me many lessons, but the most important is this. The sky belongs to everyone. It doesn't discriminate based on borders, backgrounds, or beliefs. It's we, the people, who must ensure that our systems and institutions reflect that same openness." He paused, scanning the audience. The challenges of bias and inequality aren't unique to aviation. They exist in every industry, every country. But just as we engineer solutions to make flights safer, we can engineer solutions to make our societies fairer. It starts with awareness, but it doesn't end there. It ends with action. When he finished, the hall erupted into applause. Delegates stood, clapping not just for Rafi, but for the ideals he represented. The legacy of flight. Back home, Rafi returned to the skies, his favorite place in the world. But as he guided his plane through the clouds, he felt a new sense of purpose. Every takeoff was a reminder that no matter how turbulent the journey, the horizon was always within reach. For Rafi, the fight for inclusion was far from over, but he knew one thing for certain. The higher you rise, the clearer the path becomes, for yourself and for those who follow. And so he continued to rise, building bridges across the sky. It had been 2 years since the incident at the airport thrust Captain Rafi del Rosario into the global spotlight. While his story had sparked movements and initiatives across industries, Rafi himself remained grounded, both figuratively and literally. He continued flying commercial planes, mentoring young aviators, and advocating for systemic change. For Rafi, the work wasn't about fame. It was about creating a legacy that would endure beyond his time in the cockpit. A new mission. One crisp morning, Rafi found himself in the headquarters of Skyline Futures, the mentorship and scholarship program he had co-founded with Laura Stevens. The program had grown exponentially, with chapters in cities around the world. Young people from underserved communities were now training to become pilots, engineers, air traffic controllers, and aviation innovators. The walls of the office were adorned with photos of past scholarship recipients, each one a testament to the program's success. Laura greeted him with her usual enthusiasm, a stack of reports in hand. "You're going to love this," she said, passing him a document. "We've just finalized the plans for the first Global Aviation Inclusion Conference. It'll be the largest gathering of its kind, bringing together professionals, students, and policymakers to discuss the future of diversity in our industry." Rafi flipped through the pages, his eyes lighting up. The conference would feature panels, workshops, and a showcase of innovative projects from young talents. But what caught his attention most was a keynote panel titled "Breaking Barriers in the Sky: Stories of Resilience and Hope." "Let me guess," Rafi said with a smirk. "You want me to speak on this panel?" Laura grinned. "Of course. But you won't be alone. We're inviting others who've made waves in their fields, people who've faced challenges and still soared." Rafi's mind immediately went to Mia Hernandez, the young aerospace engineer who had written to him after the summit. She was now a rising star at a leading aeronautics company, developing eco-friendly propulsion systems. He also thought of Officer Liam Carter, who had transformed himself into a vocal advocate for inclusion within airport security. Perhaps they too could share their stories. "I'm in," Rafi said, closing the folder. "Let's make it happen." Bringing the world together. Months later, the conference was in full swing, held in a massive convention center in Singapore. Delegates from over 50 countries filled the halls, their conversations creating the symphony of accents and ideas. For Rafi, walking through the conference was a surreal experience. Everywhere he turned, he saw the tangible impact of his advocacy. One of the highlights was the Innovation Pavilion, where young professionals showcased their groundbreaking projects. Mia Hernandez was there, presenting her work on renewable aviation fuels. Her booth was surrounded by curious attendees, and Rafi couldn't help but feel a surge of pride as he watched her articulate her vision with confidence. "Captain Del Rosario," Mia exclaimed when she spotted him. She hurried over, her excitement palpable. "I've been waiting to thank you in person. None of this would have been possible without your encouragement." Rafi shook his head. "You're the one who did the work, Mia. I just reminded you of what you were capable of." The keynote moment. The highlight of the conference was the keynote panel. The grand hall was packed, with every seat filled and cameras broadcasting the event live to a global audience. Rafi sat alongside Mia, Officer Carter, and 2 other trailblazers. A South African air traffic controller who had overcome systemic barriers, and a Japanese aerospace innovator who had revolutionized drone technology. One of the highlights was the Innovation Pavilion, where young professionals showcased their groundbreaking projects. Mia Hernandez was there, presenting her work on renewable aviation fuels. Her booth was surrounded by curious attendees, and Rafi couldn't help but feel a surge of pride as he watched her articulate her vision with confidence. "Captain Del Rosario," Mia exclaimed when she spotted him. She hurried over, her excitement palpable. "I've been waiting to thank you in person. None of this would have been possible without your encouragement." Rafi shook his head. "You're the one who did the work, Mia. I just reminded you of what you were capable of." The keynote moment. The highlight of the conference was the keynote panel. The grand hall was packed, with every seat filled and cameras broadcasting the event live to a global audience. Rafi sat alongside Mia, Officer Carter, and two other trailblazers, a South African air traffic controller who had overcome systemic barriers, and a Japanese aerospace innovator who had revolutionized drone technology. Each panelist shared their story, recounting the challenges they had faced and the lessons they had learned. When it was Rafi's turn, he leaned into the microphone, his voice steady but heartfelt. "We often talk about the sky as the ultimate frontier," he began. "But the real frontiers are the barriers we place on the ground, barriers of bias, assumptions, and inequality. If we want to build a future where everyone can soar, we have to dismantle those barriers first." He paused, letting the words sink in. "My story is just one among many. What matters isn't the challenges I faced, but how we, as a global community, choose to move forward. The skies belong to everyone. It's up to us to ensure that everyone has a chance to reach them." The applause was deafening, and as Rafi looked out at the crowd, he felt a profound sense of hope. The movement was no longer just his. It was a collective effort, with countless voices joining the call for change. A personal victory. As the conference wrapped up, Rafi was approached by none other than Officer Carter. Dressed in a sharp suit and wearing a badge that read Inclusion Ambassador, Carter looked like a man transformed. "I wanted to thank you, Captain," Carter said, his tone earnest. "Not just for forgiving me, but for inspiring me to do better. The training, the mentoring, it's changed my life. I'm working on a new initiative to diversify airport security teams, and it's already making a difference." Rafi smiled, clapping Carter on the shoulder. "That's what this is all about. One step at a time, one change at a time. A future in flight." The conference ended, but its impact continued to ripple across the globe. Policies were changed, new initiatives were launched, and young people from all walks of life found opportunities they never thought possible. Rafi returned to his usual routine, but with each flight, he carried the knowledge that the world was shifting in the right direction. One evening, as he piloted a long-haul flight across the Atlantic, he glanced out of the cockpit window. The sky stretched endlessly before him, painted in shades of orange and purple as the sun set on the horizon. It reminded him of something he often told his mentees. The sky isn't just a destination, it's a bridge, a place where we connect, grow, and dream. And the beauty of it is that it belongs to all of us. With a steady hand on the controls and a heart full of hope, Captain Rafael Del Rosario continued his journey, not just through the clouds but toward a world where everyone could soar, a legacy carved in the sky. Years passed, and Captain Rafi Del Rosario's story continued to resonate far beyond the aviation industry. He became a symbol of resilience, progress, and the unwavering belief that diversity was a strength, not an obstacle. While his work had sparked systemic changes, Rafi had never seen himself as a revolutionary. He was simply a pilot who believed in fairness and the limitless potential of human ingenuity. Yet, his influence had grown into a force that inspired countless lives. A milestone anniversary, the 10th anniversary of the Skyline Futures Initiative, was approaching, and the board decided to celebrate with a global summit in Manila, Rafi's ancestral home. The event was set to be more than just a celebration. It was a showcase of what could be achieved when barriers were broken and opportunities were shared. The days leading up to the summit were a whirlwind of activity. Delegates, students, and industry leaders from around the world arrived, eager to honor the program's success. The streets of Manila buzzed with excitement as banners and billboards displayed the faces of those who had benefited from Skyline Futures, alongside the tagline, "Reaching New Heights Together." For Rafi, returning to the Philippines was a deeply personal experience. Though he had lived in the United States for much of his life, he had never lost touch with his roots. Walking through the vibrant streets of Manila, he felt a mix of nostalgia and pride. He saw children playing in narrow alleys, their laughter echoing through the air, and he thought about how many of them might one day dream of flying. A gathering of stories. The summit began with a series of panels and workshops. Attendees listened to inspiring talks from students who had become engineers, pilots, and innovators thanks to Skyline Futures. One such speaker was Amir Khan, a young man from a rural village in Pakistan who had become the first in his family to attend college. Now a successful aeronautical engineer, Amir spoke about how Rafi's story had given him the courage to pursue his dreams. "Captain Del Rosario didn't just open doors for people like me," Amir said, his voice trembling with emotion. "He made us believe we belonged in spaces we never imagined." The audience erupted in applause, and Rafi, seated in the front row, felt a lump rise in his throat. These were the moments that made every challenge worthwhile. The culmination. The highlight of the summit was the grand gala held in a sprawling convention center overlooking Manila Bay. The room was packed with luminaries from every corner of the globe, pilots, engineers, policymakers, and young students whose eyes sparkled with ambition. Rafi was the evening's keynote speaker. As he took the stage, the room fell silent, the weight of his presence palpable. He looked out at the crowd, taking a moment to absorb the energy in the room. This was more than a gathering. It was a testament to what could be achieved when people worked together. "Good evening," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "As I stand here tonight, I am reminded of the first time I stepped into a cockpit. I was a young man, filled with equal parts excitement and uncertainty. I never imagined that my journey would lead to a moment like this." He paused, his eyes scanning the room. "But this moment isn't about me. It's about all of you. It's about the students who dared to dream, the mentors who guided them, and the communities that believed in the power of opportunity. Tonight, we celebrate not just what we've accomplished, but what lies ahead." Rafi's speech touched on the importance of collaboration, the need to keep challenging biases, and the power of mentorship. He ended with a call to action. "The skies are vast, but our potential is even greater. Let us continue to rise, not just as individuals, but as a global community." The audience gave him a standing ovation, their applause echoing like thunder through the hall. A personal revelation. After the gala, Rafi found himself on the terrace, gazing out at the glittering waters of Manila Bay. The cool evening breeze carried with it the scent of the sea and the faint hum of the bustling city. He was joined by Laura Stevens, his longtime collaborator and friend. "You did it, Rafi," Laura said, her voice warm. "This isn't just a program anymore. It's a movement." Rafi smiled, his eyes reflecting the twinkling city lights. "I didn't do it alone. This was always about all of us. Every mentor, every student, every supporter." Laura studied him for a moment. "What's next for you? You've accomplished so much already." Rafi leaned against the railing, his expression contemplative. "I've been thinking about that a lot lately. Maybe it's time to pass the torch. Focus on mentoring the next generation of leaders who will take this work even further." Laura nodded. "You've earned that. But knowing you, you won't be stepping away entirely." Rafi chuckled. "You know me too well." A symbol of hope. The following day, Rafi visited the newly opened Skyline Futures Academy in Manila, a state-of-the-art training facility for aspiring aviators. The academy was designed to provide hands-on experience, cutting-edge technology, and mentorship from industry leaders. As he toured the facility, Rafi was approached by a young girl named Althea, Barely 12 years old, she was one of the Academy's youngest enrollees. Clutching a notebook filled with sketches of planes, she looked up at Rafi with wide, curious eyes. "Captain Del Rosario," she said shyly, "do you think I can be a pilot one day?" Rafi knelt to her level, meeting her gaze with a warm smile. "Althea, the sky has no limits. If you work hard and believe in yourself, you can go anywhere you want." Her face lit up, and Rafi felt a surge of hope. Althea wasn't just a student, she was the future. And she was proof that the work he had devoted his life to was far from finished. The final flight. Years later, Rafi took his final flight as a commercial pilot. The announcement of his retirement was met with an outpouring of tributes from around the world. Passengers on his last flight were surprised and delighted to find themselves part of history, each receiving a commemorative pin inscribed with the words, "The sky belongs to everyone." As the plane touched down for the final time, the airport staff greeted Rafi with a water cannon salute, a traditional honor for retiring pilots. Standing at the cockpit door, he bid farewell to each passenger with a handshake and a smile, his heart full of gratitude. The legacy lives on. Though Rafi retired from the cockpit, his influence continued to soar. Skyline Futures expanded to new heights, and the seeds he had planted grew into a forest of change. Across the world, children from all walks of life dreamed of the skies, inspired by the story of a humble pilot who believed in their potential. Captain Rafael del Rosario's legacy wasn't just etched in the clouds, it was carved into the hearts of everyone who believed in a world where no dream was out of reach. And as long as there were skies to explore, his story would continue to inspire the next generation to rise, dream, and fly. A sky without limits. Captain Rafael Rafi del Rosario's journey became more than just the story of a man who rose above challenges. It became a beacon for countless others striving to overcome their own barriers. His name became synonymous with courage, innovation, and inclusivity. But more than the accolades or recognition, Rafi cherished the stories of those who took inspiration from his path to chart their own. A life well lived. Rafi spent his later years as an advisor and mentor, traveling the world to speak at conferences, meet with aspiring professionals, and collaborate on initiatives aimed at building a more inclusive aviation industry. His efforts ensured that the doors he had pushed open would remain wide for generations to come. One quiet afternoon, as Rafi walked through the Skyline Futures Academy in Manila, he saw students engrossed in their work. Simulators buzzed, chalkboards were filled with equations, and a palpable energy filled the air. Among them, Rafi spotted Althea, now a young woman, confidently leading a group project. She caught sight of him and hurried over. "Captain Del Rosario, I wanted to let you know. I got accepted into the International Pilot Program. I'm finally going to live my dream." Rafi smiled warmly, pride swelling in his chest. "I always knew you would. Remember, Althea, the sky isn't the limit. It's just the beginning." The lesson of the horizon. Rafi's story carried a universal truth. Greatness is not defined by where you come from or what others expect of you, but by the dreams you dare to pursue and the barriers you work to dismantle. His life showed that resilience and kindness, paired with a commitment to equity, could create ripples of change that touched the lives of millions. For the aviation industry, Rafi's legacy was a reminder that the skies are vast enough for everyone, and progress is made when we uplift those around us. For the world, his story was a testament to the power of perseverance and the importance of never judging someone by their appearance or background. A sky forever open. As Rafi reflected on his life, he often thought about the symbolism of the horizon, a line that seems unreachable but grows clearer the higher you rise. His mission was never just about reaching new heights for himself. It was about lifting others to see beyond the limits placed before them. Captain Rafael del Rosario's journey ended as all great flights do, with the promise of new horizons for those who followed. His story left the world with a powerful message. No matter where you come from or what challenges you face, you have the power to soar and the skies will always be waiting. And so, the man who believed the sky belonged to everyone left behind a world forever changed. One where dreams could take flight without limits, and where everyone had the chance to rise. This concludes the story. Thank you for watching until the end. I hope you found it enjoyable. If you did, please consider liking the video and sharing it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and activate the notification bell for more captivating stories. Have a great day.